HR to HR, from hell raising to human respect. The podcast is a little bit of career therapy, a little bit of chaos control, and a lot of workplace wisdom. Basically, all the things that ain't in the employee handbook. You're not going to want to miss it.
Welcome to HR to HR, from hell raising to human respect podcast. I am your host, curator, and content creator. So glad that you are here. Please make sure that you are liking, following, subscribing, and sharing so you do not miss out on what we got going on. We have information that helps you thrive in the workplace. Y'all, I am so excited. I can barely contain myself. I couldn't even get through the introduction because I just wanted to get to this part right here. I am very blessed and fortunate to have a guest, Angela Rasheed-Stephens. Let me tell y'all, she was my day one in the organization. And when I met her, I said, you know, I like her. I want to do what she's doing. And the next thing I know, we got paired together and we ended up working on some amazing work together. And now she is here as a guest on this podcast. And guess what, y'all? She is an author. We are going to talk about her fine works. Angela Rasheed-Stephens is a compassionate leader, a seasoned human resource professional, and a passionate advocate for equity and emotional intelligence in the workplace. She has written a phenomenal book, Beyond the Surface, Navigating Human Resources with Compassion and Insight. And I am so humbled and honored to have her as a guest today. Angie, girl, please introduce yourself. I know I gave some high level. I done talked about the book, but I'm going to put it over to you because I want you to tell all the things.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you. It is such an honor and a privilege to be with the incomparable Dr. Ebony Baylor. Let's not forget you. We still got to give you your flowers as well. But I thank you for that illustrious introduction. But really, if people want to know about me, what they need to know is this book is who I am on paper. Right. Again, I've been in HR for over 30 years. I started my career by accident, actually volunteering and helping. But through a life's work and life experiences, I have it from both sides. I have it from the employee perspective and from the employer leader perspective. So if you want to know who I am, it's in the pages of these books. And I consider myself a walking canvas and a demonstration of what it's like to be an employee and what we should be doing as a leader.
Well, let me just tell you, Angie, this book is 94 pages and I probably bagged probably 75% of the book. Okay, because there is wisdom on each and every page. And because I know you personally, I felt your life on these pages. This is an excellent work. It speaks volumes to who you are as a leader, as an HR professional, and the information that is shared here. I'm going to go on and say it now. Everybody go get you some copies, not just one, some copies, because what we need to do is make sure that this ends up in the hands of leaders, soon to be leaders, aspiring leaders, and even those that are navigating organizational structures. So can we just dive in?
We can just dive in. But let me say one thing. I really like the way you talked about it's 94 pages, and I want to speak to that real quick.
Yeah.
I thought about, from my work with you, I learned a lot from you. So one of the things I did is I thought about the audience for this book, right?
Mhm.
Everyone doesn't love to read. Sometimes we don't have time to read. And so it took me about 2.5 years to write this book. And at first it was a real long, almost Harry Potter. And I was like, ain't nobody got time for all of that, right? So what I did was I took some time to focus and meditate on what's important and what's going to resonate. If I am an employee who is struggling in an organization, looking for my next career path, maybe I'm in an organization where my perception is that the leadership is toxic, what are the key components that I need to know that's going to give me hope? And if I am a leader that think I'm all of that in a bag of chips and don't realize that I'm poison, what are the key components? So that's why the book ended up being around 94 pages, because I wanted it to be where it doesn't matter where you are in your organization, but also it's a quick read and it's just to the point. Nobody needs 40 pages of the wind is due and the dust is dawn. What is it I need to know? So that's that. So I just needed to get that out there.
Honestly, it is right on time. Now think about it. Now, we're both learning enthusiasts. So we know the way that people learn and the way they retain information, it is constantly evolving. So the level of brevity in this book, getting straight to the point, it is a brilliant read. It is a brilliant write. And again, kudos to you for publishing this. And so the title in and of itself, Beyond the Surface, right?
Yes.
So both of us have HR experience.
Yes.
And so recentering HR as a people first function. Why
Yes.
is this so important? Like I have all of the questions, but I know this is the impetus of how the book got started.
Yes.
In addition to this being your life story, why is this so important?
It's important because when you think about the word human resources, the first word is human. And over time, the world of HR has evolved. We started as a people organization, and then we had, everybody needs to be strategic. We need to be these business partners. And somewhere along the way, we lost the human component. And in losing the human component, we only see our employees as their job titles. So if I am a receptionist, you only see receptionist, but what you don't know is I'm a data analytics guru. And because you haven't went beyond the surface, you can't see my hidden talents. And because you haven't created a safe environment from a people perspective to help allow me to come to work authentically and be who I am and make it safe for me, there's no room for employees to be themselves. And so one of the things that I often say is HR is about people and processes. Without the people, the processes don't work. So nobody should be afraid of AI, because if you don't have the people, your processes won't work.
And the concept in and of itself, we're thinking about HR as it is evolved, right? It used to be payroll, personnel, these
Party
kind of
planner,
things now.
yay.
Yeah, right. And so now all of these functions, we have all of these different layers, we lose sight of people. And so I think you highlight that. And so look, chapter 2, let's just talk about chapter 2.
Yes, ma'am. Let's go to chapter 2.
The human element, recognizing our greatest asset beyond policy. I think we just tapped on this. Talk to us about some of the motivation behind that. What has happened that has allowed policy to hijack the human-centric aspect of human resources?
So when you think about human resources and policy, human resources professionals are often looked at as the police, right? This is the policy, this is what it is, and there is no deviating around what the policy says. But when I began to dive into my research as it relates to this book, and even in chapter 1, there was an event that happened that made me look beyond the policy. Because what happens is when we stick to this is what the rule says, every situation is different, every person is different, and you have to look at it from that perspective and not just say, employee A did this is the policy, and let's move to the next step. Because there's a person behind it. Getting back to that people-centric, there's a person behind it. Have you ever been in an organization where you have your leader and then their leader, right? So your leader goes and says, employee A, I need you to do X. Well, then their next level leader comes to you and say, do Y. Well, as a person, you're the higher up, so I'm going to follow the rules and do what you say. But then your leader comes back with this policy. You failed to follow instructions. They don't know that you received a different instruction from a higher leader. And common sense is, they're the highest person. It's my boss's boss. I'm going to follow them. But then here come your boss with this policy. I'm failing to follow instructions. You didn't even ask me what happened and how I got here. So I'm penalized for this policy that I signed off in my onboarding that I'm going to do ABC. And because we're looking at just my title and what I'm supposed to do what you told and do what I told you to do, that's a problem.
That has gone wrong primarily because we don't have that appreciative or positive inquiry.
Yes.
What is the value of that, Angie? Because I think that is where we miss it.
Well, everything comes from the place of seeking to understand. And if I go back through my experience, what would I have wanted someone to say to me in that moment when you assume or perceive that I've done something wrong? You didn't inquire. You just charged me up and you did. You didn't talk to me with empathy. You didn't ask me what happened. You don't know if I've just had a traumatic event in my family and I barely made it to work. And so all of those things impact the employee. Nobody comes to work to mess up. Nobody comes to work to do a bad job. And nobody comes to work to say, I hate this job. So if something is wrong, where there's a disconnect with the way an employee is feeling about their job, something has happened from the time they onboarded to now that has caused them to think about this organization differently. And so that's the power of the inquiry, treating people with respect and empathy. You make room to build those relationships where there's effective communication versus I'm your boss and you do what I tell you to do.
And on page 13 of chapter 2, you talk about the significance of establishing a culture centered on trust, transparency, open communication, guided by empathetic and insightful leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about that statement.
I mean, there's so much there. I want to start with the empathetic leadership, and I want to take it from the perspective of an interview. We're
Okay.
looking for a job. And one of the things that happens during an interview is the candidate is all nervous and they're ready, right? And then they're faced with nobody's smiling,
Yeah.
nobody's and so right then and there, that's the beginning of their relationship. You're just entering this company and people are looking like they've sucked on sour lemons in the interview process, right?
Right.
No empathy to this person is nervous. And then the other thing is they're judging them from the perspective of, if you can't come in here and do what I need you to do hitting off the ground, then I don't need you. So they're dismissed before they even get into the organization.
Right.
But if you do happen to make it past that, from an empathetic standpoint, what was your experience like before you ever got in here? So all of those things impact how they come onto the organization and then what happens to get them from where they are to either staying with your organization or deciding they got to go.
Yeah. What makes you decide you got to go?
Well, what makes you decide you have to go is ineffective communication. And what I've learned through my OD experience is people have different learning styles. I'm a kinesthetic learner. Don't put something on the board and say, I showed it to you, you've been trained. And here's what I see with training. Training from a operational leader's perspective. Now, HR professionals know this, but training from an operational leader's perspective is you went to the class and we showed you the stuff and you did the stuff and you've been trained. There's no checking for knowledge to make sure you understood. So nobody's going to stand up being new and say, I don't understand, I didn't get it. They're going to smile and say yes, and then go ask somebody, can you tell me what they told me to do? Because I don't want to tell my boss I didn't understand. Right?
Correct.
So when it comes to that, we have to make sure that people are understanding what they need. And so that comes, of course, with the onboarding. But realistically, when you think about your own onboarding over time and every job you've ever had, you can count on your hand a couple of places where the onboarding was done effectively.
Right.
The rest of them was, you've been onboarding, it's in your file,
Right.
and you really haven't been onboarded.
Or you refer to the manual.
Right.
You talked about that empathy and using the example of the interview and folks walking into leaders or their interviewer looking like they've been baptized in pickle juice.
Right.
Yeah. Well, talk to me a little bit about establishing a culture that is centered on trust and transparency. That seems to be a challenge. And, you and I both know about building trust, sustaining trust, and the significance of that. But why is there such a challenge? Why do you see as a challenge in this space and your research and developing this book? What stood out as a pain point? Yeah,
so this goes back to some of it is tied to generations. So the organizations today are being led by Gen X and baby boomers, right? Baby boomers are kind of retiring. Gen X, what is the saying about Gen X? We are the forgotten generation, right? It's our turn now, right? So with it being our turn, when we're talking about culture, this is the way we've always done it. As far as we know the baby boomer way, we know the millennial way, but when it comes to culture, we've earned our stripes. And even though there's a different generation, regardless of what generation they fall in, we are kind of stuck with this is how it goes. And we finally made it to this pinnacle and we're not really willing to change. And the world has changed. If you think about 20 years ago, you didn't have self-checkout. You had to go to the grocery store and somebody bagged your bags and things of that nature. But when it comes to culture, we only know our culture. And we're not willing to learn what it takes for a multi-generational culture and build a culture of trust and respect. So how we got it, learning, training, development, and all of that, we expect people up, generations above us and below us to just get it because it's finally our turn. We're not getting pushed out by these super smart technical people. So this is it. And if you don't like it, go do something else.
Right.
So,
we're digging our heels in.
right. And so trust comes from, are we effectively communicating? So I say this thing in the book that trust, communication, and perception is reality. So when you talk about trust, the first thing is you have to be able to show what trust is. I don't like, for me, everybody gets a clean slate when I first meet you. But even when there's a mistake, it comes back to Stephen Covey. He did a book on trust that talks about, like, if you think about if Ebby and I have a disagreement, and let's say I have 10 poker chips, every time we have a discord, I lose a chip. But it's going to take 2 or 3 more chips to get back to where I was in the beginning. So when we're not effectively communicating, we don't realize that we're eroding trust because they have one perception, we have another perception, and there's miscommunication. And anytime there's miscommunication, it breaks down the relationship. And when the relationship starts to break down, then that erodes the culture.
Yeah. So why do we keep getting it wrong?
Because we have not studied what we need to do to get it right. And when I say I'm not talking about a specific generation. I mean, people who are leaders of the organization. The world is moving faster than any of us ever imagined it would be. Like years ago, there was a cyclical cycle when we were busy, right? And then things slowed down and we had a chance to regroup and recalibrate. Now it's nonstop. And so we're so busy trying to get the goals and the metrics and the this and the that we haven't stopped to think about what went right, what went wrong, and how do we need to do it differently. We're just on to the next project. Some projects are in the project graveyard. They haven't even stopped. They're not even finished. We started 15 projects. We finished the 2 or 3 big ones that, everybody knows about, but we haven't stopped. And so we haven't recognized that we're on this cycle of running as fast as we can and that things are falling by the wayside. We haven't recognized any of that. And so by not recognizing it, we don't even recognize that there is a problem and we don't even recognize that we're getting it wrong.
So having an honest conversation about where HR sometimes gets it wrong, we're not even checking for it. Do we not realize that it's wrong? Like the Rome is on fire. Like how are we missing this?
We are missing it because we are, as a whole, we're still stuck in how do we prove our value as HR professionals? We're strategic. I want a seat at the table. We're selfish. We've lost the people. We've lost the organization. And some of us have lost ourselves in our quest for success. And we don't even recognize that we're that far behind. When you think about HR as a whole, one of the questions that resonates more with me is, who does HR go to when HR is the problem? That's a good question. I don't have all of the answers to that. Depending on your organization, you may have a safe space. But typically, if HR is the problem, then your whole organization is in trouble. There's 2 places in the organization that you need strong, ethical people. That's HR and finance. And if HR people don't feel safe to stand up and say that here's a problem in our organization, then you can expect that to just permeate through the whole organization. Mistrust, unethical behavior, talking to people like they're crazy. And then everybody's turning a blind eye like they don't see anything. Nobody knows nothing's happening. Everything is just normal. That's the normacy of it, right? We get into this new normal that bad is good. And then our job becomes how do we protect ourselves from being sued, but we're not really dealing with the underground issues at stake.
Right. So we're turning a blind eye
Yes.
to the behavior. And then also there's a lack of accountability.
Yes.
Let's talk about that a little bit because that is in the book.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
about
is.
accountability and the impact when there's a lack of. And maybe we can even talk about why there's a lack of accountability in addition to, willful blindness. But what happens when there's not the accountability from the HR space?
When there's not the accountability from the HR space, it really can cause havoc throughout the entire organization. Accountability starts with each and every person individually. Typically in organizations, we'll see values, we'll see, mission statements and all of this, and accountability is always on there, right? but are we
Correct.
really living that value? Accountability means, am I doing the right thing when nobody's looking?
Mm-hmm.
And we actually start to point fingers of, you're not being accountable and they're not, so it's not them. Each person has to demonstrate accountability. And then if each one teach one, you can start to grow your organization from an accountability standpoint.
So why do we struggle with that? Why is HR willing to take a blind eye? Why are we not willing to be accountable or be held accountable for some of the conditions that maybe are being experienced?
I think most of it is fear. When you think about organizations today, accountability comes at a high risk. Some of it could be, do I take a risk and be labeled as the troubled employee or the troublemaker employee because I spoke up?
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is, I've seen that bad behavior is rewarded. So if I say something, that's not going to put me in a good place. I want my promotion. I want this title. So all of those things contribute to HR not doing the right thing. Not all HR, but some HR not doing the right thing. But I think the biggest component of that is fear of what you're not going to get or what's going to happen to you if you speak up. And depending on your experience, and depending on, and I'm going to touch, this is going to be a little touchy subject here. Depending on your demographic, if you speak up, you can be labeled a certain way, and you weren't doing anything but just asking questions for clarity. But now you are aggressive, assertive, rude, disrespectful, right? But all you did was say, you asked me to be here at 12 and now you're asking me to come in at 9. And I'm just trying to understand what changed because we didn't effectively communicate. We wanted you here at 12. We're asking you to come at 9 because the shipment came in. We need you to do this and that. But because we didn't, all we said was, you're supposed to be 12, come at 9, do what I told you. And so now I'm just asking, can you give me some context behind the change? And now I'm a difficult employee.
Or you're not receptive to instruction, or you're pushing back.
Yes, pushing back. And again, a lot of us don't really want to deal with the confrontation. And so we suffer in silence.
What's the impact of suffering in silence?
So then you develop imposter syndrome. You lose confidence in who you are. You lose confidence in your brilliance. You lose confidence in the value that you add to the organization. And then once you snap out of this, like maybe go to a different department, a different place, then you have to rebuild. But those little nuggets of imposter syndrome, you have to kind of rebuild where you were.
Yeah.
Then it goes back to now you don't trust people. So that trust that we talked about earlier, based on your past experience, is going to cause you now, if someone does something that is remotely similar to what you've previously experienced, it's not the same thing, but because it's similar, it's a trigger for you. And now that person is receiving the impact of something that they had nothing to do with. And that's not even what the situation is. But because of your experience, it's a trigger. And now you have to kind of, use like life coach Angie to help you get over that.
Yeah. The trauma, the impact is like extensive. You don't just recover from it. Even when you step away from that situation, you have this baggage that comes with you. And if you haven't done the work, you're taking it with you wherever you go. And anything, like you said, that resembles or comes close to a similar situation, you're automatically taken back to that place.
The thing that resonates with me about workplace trauma is a lot of times when you have an employee that's showing up in a way that's unfavorable, whatever you want to characterize them as, rude, disrespectful, whatever, a lot of times it's not really anger. It's hurt. And nobody has HR. We should have our eyes of human resources open where I can recognize something is wrong with this employee. I remember a situation where I was getting off the elevator and just person that I see every day, I was like, hey, how are you? Good morning. And they were like, And I was like, are you okay? All I said was, are you okay? Because they weren't themselves. They cried so hard I had to usher them in my office. Now, they had a significant event that was happening for them personally, but all I did was I recognized that this is not who this person is normally. And because I asked, are you okay? I was able to build trust with this person, but also help them during a traumatic event because I saw them. Right. And so it wasn't anger or fear. They were hurt and nobody saw them. This is why
And
we have to go beyond the surface.
people are more than their job descriptions or the things that they do. They come into work a lot of times with the weight of the world on them from the other hats that they wear.
Mm.
And so in that instance, that person that you encountered had the weight of their world outside of work on them that showed up. In that particular moment, and you saw beyond the surface, just like you
Mhm.
said. In chapter 3 of your book, the title is Case Studies: Tales of Woe, Misfortune, and Toxic Leadership. And you have all of these examples and listing different situations where there was unmanageable workloads, communication breakdown, lack of support, culture of fear, mental wellness, lacking that, like all of these things. Talk to me a little bit more about the journey in creating chapter 3.
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. I am so glad you asked. So first, let me say, when I say toxic leadership, people often think, oh, it's a manager screaming at you. It's not. It's all of those things that you mentioned.
Mhm.
And sometimes we don't recognize as leaders what's happening to our employees. So let's say I worked this particular job for years and I've been promoted from the first level all the way up to the VP of this operation. So my perspective of what this job does has changed in 15 years. So what they do today is not what I did. But as a leader, I have the same perspective of what I did when I did the job. And so I'm holding employees accountable to these unreasonable um, workloads. They don't have the supplies, but I haven't made it safe enough for them to tell me that. And when you think about, we spend, the average person, 8 hours a day at work. That's not counting commute time. A third of your day is gone, right? And when you get to work, it should not be a place where you're fighting for survival, whether it's to do the job or to be heard or to be seen. And so a toxic workplace is when all of those things that you described earlier turn into the perfect storm that has a serious impact on our employees. So when you talk about mental health, it's not just going to EAP. It's not just going to, like, do we really have real resources, a respite room to where if I'm having a day, I can just go somewhere and sit down and process my thoughts because today is just not it. And we've all had those days to where if one more person call me, you're going to meet my alter ego. And we don't want that, right?
Right.
So when we talk about the toxic work environment, we really have to take a look at what it's like to be the employee and also what are we doing as a leader to help eliminate that toxicity from the work environment.
Shifting toward what it looks like to course correct and do the work well.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? What does it take for HR and
Mm-hmm.
leadership to transition from this space? I mean, I think one is acknowledging that maybe
Mm-hmm.
that has not been done well.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we've realized that, hey, we might need to check on our people differently or check on them, their whole them, right?
Right.
How do we transition from where we are to doing better, being better, and doing right by people?
I think the most important thing is building relationships. Now, a lot of times when I say building relationships, people get scared. I'm not telling them my business, what I did. I'm not saying that type of relationship. You don't have to do that. But it's about having honest conversations with your employees. Are you really telling them when they're not performing? Or are you acting like everything is great and then they're shocked on their performance review? Or are you, a recency area? I just did something this one time and now my whole review sucks. When we talk about how do we get it right, I think the most important thing is how do we build real relationships with our employees that's about honest, effective communication the entire duration of their employee cycle. And that's accountability, that's trust, and then understand that you can learn from your employees. Just because you're the boss don't mean you know it all. And so one of the things that I often do when I meet new hires or new employees, I let them know that, whatever my title is, I don't really go by my title. If you notice when I introduce myself, I normally say, my name is, Angie Rasheed-Stephens, and I support this area. I don't give you my title because a lower level employee may be intimidated just by your title. If you are a manager, director, AVP, they're not going to be comfortable, but I let them know that this is a partnership. And then I often say, look what I learned from you today. That builds their confidence. I want you to know, like I had an employee in one of my recent roles. She taught me how to pause. Now, I thought, been an HR professional for all these years, that I knew how to pause. And by pause, I mean when I get frustrated, I'm taking a moment, pausing, reflecting, and I wasn't. I wasn't saying anything, but my body language, and she would be like, well, maybe we should talk about it. And I was like, okay, maybe I shifted a certain way where she can see this is not about to go well. So, and so what I did was, when we talked about it, I was like, man, thank you. This meeting was about to go off the rails. Now, it was going to be professional, so I don't want anybody thinking I was going to, swing on somebody. But she could tell because we had built a relationship that I was irritated by the way the conversation was going.
Right.
And after the meeting, I said, help me, let's talk about that meeting. I was frustrated, blah, blah, blah. Thank you for, interjecting. And she said, what you need to do is pause. And I said, well, talk to me a little bit about what that means. And so she gave me some insight, pausing, reflecting. You don't have to defend, blah, blah, blah. And here I am, the super duper leader, and this is my employee. But we practice that. And I would say, give me a cue when I need to pause. And so when she found a better opportunity, I made sure to share with her the things that she taught me. So we were a partnership. It wasn't I'm the boss. So if you want to eliminate toxic cultures, you have to build better relationships, and you have to do that through effective communication, honesty, accountability, and then making sure that you recognize what they've shared with you or what they bring to the table, not just you sharing something with them.
And so this is a perfect segue into chapter 4, because you
Okay.
just gave us some nuggets here. And chapter 4 is reading the room, tools and strategies for understanding and managing the emotional landscape of an organization. And we know organizations are full of personalities, full of different type of attitudes, mindsets, structures, and all of these things. What are some of the best practices if we truly want to lean in and develop our emotional acumen in navigating an organization, whether you're in HR or not?
I would say the first thing you have to do is be very observant, because in every organization, there are several layers. There are departmental layers, there's political layers, there's demographic layers. You got all of these layers. Understand what you're seeing. And if you see something that doesn't necessarily equate to something that you value, like it's against your values and ethics, then in that moment, what I do is, how do I be the light to demonstrate what I want to see? It is not about trying to point out who's in the clique, who's not in the clique, who's the good, the bad, the ugly. I've learned a long time ago, you can't hide talent, and the truth don't need any support. So I'm not looking in the organization for what's wrong. I'm actually looking for what's right. And then I want to make sure that I'm highlighting what's right, demonstrating what's right, and make sure that that's what I'm spreading instead of the negative energy.
Be the light.
Be the light.
Be the light that you want to see.
Right.
This book, Angie, is so, like I said, I've got so many, and I'm just going to have you back. We're going to have another
Yes,
couple
ma'am.
of
Yes,
sessions
ma'am.
to go through this, because there's
It's
so
a lot.
It is. It's a lot. But the thing that I appreciate greatly about this is the human part of it. And so much of the inspiration around even this podcast, HR to HR, from hell raising to human respect, is the very thing that is missing. And I remember when you shared that you wrote this book, and I was like, oh my God. I knew we've been kindred spirits for the longest.
Yes.
Unknowingly.
Yes.
But we both uniquely in our own ways discovered that there is a humanness that is missing. Thinking about each of us as living our own unique experience. None of us, like you said earlier, come to work to do a bad job, to do a piss poor job. None of us goes to work to say, I hate this place. But there are the weights of the world and those unique lived experiences that contribute and inevitably blend into work. And where we keep bumping our head is forgetting that there is a human on the other side of the 50-11 jobs and tasks that are associated in their job description. If you could be the light of the world in the human resource space, what would be your greatest gift to transform the HR function?
I would say empathy and grace. The reason why I'm so passionate about empathy and grace is um, I'll share with you the very first time I was put into a leadership role. I was a good employee, but when I was put into the leadership role, they thought they gave me some training, but I didn't even know how to approve time cards. I didn't. Training is go learn how to just lead or how to talk to people. What I needed was, how do I do performance reviews? How do I deal with all of this stuff? And I'll never forget my employees looking at me like she don't know what she's doing. And I didn't. And it was painful to struggle because here I am, I'm your leader, and now I'm exposed. So I'm vulnerable because now they know I don't know what I'm doing. And some of them applied for the job and I got it and they knew how to do the stuff, some of the things that I didn't know how to do. Right? So how do we be empathetic and show grace as we're like, I'll say it like this. I had a couple of situations throughout my career where I was treated really bad. And instead of being frustrated with the people that I perceived were treating me bad, I began to think, what can I do to make it easier for them? They were my leader. So how do I make them look good? How do I be a good employee? Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I don't understand what they need from me. How do I do this right? So instead of fighting and trying to win the war on, I hate this person, this leader, I channeled my energies into how can I be a better employee? Now, whether they see it or not wasn't the point. The point was, how do I take this bad and turn it into something good? So empathy and grace gives you that, and then it changes your focus on how you see things. It changes your perspective. If your perspective is, they treat me bad, woe is me, and I need to fight for my right to party. When you focus on the fight, you always lose. When you focus on how do I make it better in whatever capacity I can, even if they never see it, you come out on top every time.
That's perfect. I mean, honestly, because you're not accountable for everyone else. You're accountable for
Right.
you. At the end of the day, you are responsible for you and how
Right.
you show up, how you react, how you respond, what you
Right.
give. You may not be responsible for what you are in receipt of.
Right.
However, you are responsible for how you react or respond to it. So that is totally fair. Empathy and grace. I definitely would like for us to continue the dialogue and have
Yes,
another
yes, yes.
episode. But in our time right now, I always like to conclude each episode with a WWW, workplace word of wisdom. And
Okay.
so you are, again, the book, just making sure everyone can see it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Please go out and get this book. If you have not gotten it, we're going to make sure that you get the QR code and the links in the episode description so that you can get this, get a couple of copies. It's very important and very extremely valuable. Give us a workplace word of wisdom. It can come from the book or it cannot. It can just come from your heart, whatever your soul's pleasure to bless us
Yes,
with.
so the concept of the book and beyond the surface, what I think about is HR was never meant to be the most powerful voice in the room. It's meant to be the most human voice for human resources for a reason. I hope that helps.
Mic drop. That's it. That's it. There's nothing else to be said. Priceless.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and joining us today. Angela Rasheed-Stephens, you have blessed us. Y'all go please get this book. You got to get this book, Beyond the Surface, Navigating Human Resources with Compassion and Insight. Barnes & Nobles, Amazon. Where else can people find you? Because you are a life coach as well, right? Tell the HR community how they can get in contact with you.
Yes, indeed. They can get in contact with me by premiersolutionsforlifealtogether.com. So go to your nearest Google browser and just type in premiersolutionsforlife.com, and I am here to serve.
And tell us a little bit more about the coaching that you do. Just go and get your plug in.
Yeah. So with the coaching, I do just-in-time coaching, which means wherever you are in life, the whole premise behind my life coaching business is to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. We have emotional intelligence assessments. We can use the Berkman assessment. And the way that I coach, it's not like you buy 12 packages or this or that. What I do is the first session is a 15-minute session for me to kind of show you what I do, but also for you to make a decision on if I'm the right coach for you. And then after we do that, then we can come up with a strategy about what you need. So you may call me today and say you need career coaching, but then something traumatic has happened in your life and we actually shift into something else. So again, it's not where you're filling out a bunch of papers that you don't want to fill out and then we're talking about a bunch of stuff like that. It's just in time coaching where I'm going to meet you where you are and help you to get from where you are to where you want to be. PremierSolutionsForLife.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much again, Angela. My friend, my sister, we are in the HR journey together. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being my friend. I appreciate you being my day one and joining me on this tour of this podcast. So thank you so much. And last but not least, again, I'm going to give another plug for this book. Y'all, please, if you are a leader, aspiring leader, if you're an HR professional or you are an employee just navigating your career, please make sure you check out Beyond the Surface, Navigating Human Resources with Compassion and Insight, available at Amazon, available at Barnes & Nobles. Make sure you check the episode description for those links or the QR code. Until next time, friends, stay respected by being respectful.